Okay, we'll start with the Mangalacharan. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namah Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Gadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeyam Sri Guru Sri Davatakamalam Sri Gurun Vaishnavasya Sri Rupam Sagarjatam Sagana Raghunathan Vitam Sampse Jivam Sadvaitam Savdutam Paljana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Sri Vishakhan Vitamsya हे कृष्णा करुणा सिंधु दीनबंधु जगतपति गोपीशा गोपिका कांता राधा कांता नमस्ते तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये वंशकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिंधुभ्येव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम राम हरे 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 कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम राम हरे हरे ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय so today we will be looking at the last verse of chapter 11 canto 1 tam minire apala muda trainam chanuvratam raha apramana vido baltur ishwaram matayo yata तम्मेनिरेय बलामूदा स्त्रैनं चानुव्रतां रहा अप्रमाणा विदो बर्तुर ईश्वरं मतयो यता तम्मेनिरेय बलामूदा स्त्रैनं चानुव्रतां रहा अप्रमाणा विदो बर्तुर ईश्वरं मतयो यता तम्मेनिरेय बलामूदा स्त्रैनं चानुव्रतां रहा अप्रमाणा विदो बर्तुर ईश्वरं मतयो यता. Can anyone try? Decide.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Proceed.
Mataji, you go first, Mataji.
Okay. Anyone?
Mataji, you go first.
Mataji. Yeah.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Yeah.
Tam menire bala mudaha strenam chanur rattam raha abramana vido bardur iswaram madaya yada.
Okay. Thank you, Mataji. Hare Krishna. Next.
Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Tam menire bala mudam stratenanam chanu vatranaraha apranamanam vichupatur isavaranam madayam yato yata.
Okay. Thank you. Hare Krishna. Anyone else? Okay. We'll proceed with the synonyms. Tam, unto Lord Sri Krishna. Minire, took it for granted. Abala, delicate. Muda, because of simplicity. Strainam, one who is dominated by his wife. Cha, also. Anuratam, follower. Raha, lonely place. Apramana Vida, unaware of the extent of glories. Bartu, of their husband. Ishwaram, the supreme controller. Mataya, thesis. Yata, as it is. Translation: the simple and delicate women truly thought that Lord Sri Krishna, their beloved husband, followed them and was dominated by them. They were unaware of the extent of the glories of their husband, as the atheists are unaware of him as the supreme controller. purport, even the transcendental wives of Lord Sri Krishna did not know completely the unfathomable glories of the Lord. This ignorance is not mundane because there is some action of the internal potency of the Lord in the exchange of feelings between him and his eternal associates. Okay, if we look at the translation here, the second sentence, it is stated, they were unaware of the extent of the glories of their husband, as the atheists are unaware of him as the supreme controller. So it seems like these queens of Dwaraka, who actually great elevated personalities, even they are unaware of the glories of Krishna. And this sentence actually implies as though they are also like as ignorant as the atheists who are unaware of Krishna as the supreme controller. So can anyone tell why is it so? Even the transcendental wives, the queens of Dwaraka, even they are ignorant of Krishna as the supreme controller, and they are actually thinking that Krishna was dominated by them. Can anyone explain why?
Bewildered by Yogamaya, Prabhu.
Yeah, and why is it so? Aren't they supposed to be liberated? Why are they being? Why are they also being like as ignorant as even the atheists? Like even they are thinking that the supreme controller is like they are thinking that they are actually dominating the supreme controller. So that is also like it also appears to be like the ignorance of the atheist. So of course they are being dominated by Yogamaya, but why is it so? Why is it happening? Aren't they supposed to be like liberated and more elevated compared to the atheists?
Once they realize it is the personality of God, then the natural love will not be there, Prabhu.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Prabhu. So just to understand this, because in this verse, the main content of this verse is talking about how even the transcendental wives are being like ignorant, quite similar to even the atheists. So to understand this, we'll just look at this important verse from Gita 7.14. Daivihesha gunamayi mamamaya duratyaya mameveye prapachante mayametam tanatite. This divine energy of mind, consisting of the three modes of material nature, is difficult to overcome, but those who have surrendered unto me can easily cross beyond it. So even before this verse in Gita 7.12 and 7.13, they also talk about in those verses, Krishna also talks about the three modes of material nature, and it is mainly focused on the non-believers, the so-called atheists who completely deny the existence of Krishna. And even normally whenever we look at the so-called atheists or rationalists, they always attribute everything to nature. But Krishna clearly says in 7.12 and 7.13 that even that illusion, they are being deluded by his material energy only, that those atheists they are always attributing everything to nature, not knowing that even material nature is under the control of Krishna. But in this purport, Prabhupada explains about the two types of energy and how both are also under the control of Krishna. The Supreme Personality of Godhead has innumerable energies, and all these energies are divine. Although the living entities are part of his energies and are therefore divine, due to contact with material energy, their original superior power is covered. So we are also originally part of the divine energy. So we are also originally part of the internal potency of Krishna, the Yogamaya. But due to our material desires, we are now conditioned souls, and we are actually covered by partially by the material energy. Actually, we have become subservient to the material energy. Being thus covered by material energy, one cannot possibly overcome its influence. As previously stated, both the material and spiritual natures, being emanations from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, are eternal. So we have also seen in some of our previous sessions that the entire creation, consisting of the spiritual world and also the material world, they both belong to, they are both emanations of the energy of Krishna. So nothing is independent from the Supreme Lord. Even the spiritual world is under his control. And we know that the spiritual world is actually 3 times larger than the size of this material world. So that is also another reason why the material nature is considered to be inferior, and it is actually in complete darkness compared to the ever effulgent spiritual world, which is illuminated by the Supreme Lord's Brahma Jyoti. As previously stated, both the material and spiritual natures, being emanations from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, are eternal. The living entities belong to the eternal superior nature of the Lord, but due to contamination by the inferior nature, matter, their illusion is also eternal. The conditioned soul is therefore called Nitya Baddha, or eternally conditioned. The exact opposite of this is Nitya Siddha, the liberated souls. So those who are Nitya Baddha, they are under the influence of material nature. But those who become liberated, they become Nitya Siddha, but they also still remain under the influence of Krishna's superior or divine energy. So regardless of whether we are bound by material nature, or even if we get liberated, still we will be bound by Krishna's superior energy. And there's no such thing as complete liberation, meaning that we cannot be completely independent. The entire creation is under the control of the Supreme Lord. So even the liberated souls, they still come under the control of Krishna's internal energy. And it is impossible to imagine otherwise, because the entire creation, whether it is the spiritual world or material world, both are under the control of the Supreme Lord. So nothing can be independent from Krishna. Only he alone is independent. No one can trace out the history of his becoming conditioned at a certain date in the in material history. So it is referring to how we, being original part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, we became contaminated due to the influence of material energy. Actually, it is due to our material desires. So since time immemorial, we have been taking all the different types of material bodies. So we have been occupying the 84 lakh apartments since time immemorial, according to our consciousness in during our stay in each of those apartments. But that the first spark of contamination, it happened like since time immemorial, and we have been going through this incessant cycle of Janma Mrityu Jara Vyadhi over all these different types of material bodies. Consequently, his release from the clutches of material nature is very difficult, even though that material nature is an inferior energy. Meaning that this material nature, the material energy, is actually even inferior to us, because our identity is that we are part and parcel of the superior energy, of the internal energy of Krishna. So this material nature is actually the external and inferior energy. It is even inferior to us, but due to our contamination, so we have actually become subservient even to the inferior energy. inferior material nature is defined herein as divine nature due to its divine connection and movement by the divine will. So even the material nature is still under the control of Krishna. And so it is always, even those who deny the existence of Krishna, all those who say that God doesn't exist, they attribute everything to nature, but their ignorance is such that they don't even know that even the material nature originates from Krishna. So that is what Krishna talks about in verses 7.12 and 7.13. But specifically in this verse, the connection between the two types of energy that is being explained, being conducted by divine will, material nature, although inferior, acts so wonderfully in the construction and destruction of the cosmic manifestation. The Vedas confirm this as follows: Mayam tu Prakritim Vidyan, Mainam tu Maheshwaram. Although Maya is false or temporary, the background of Maya is the supreme magician, the personality of Godhead, who is Maheshwara, the supreme controller. Shvetashvatara Upanishad 4.10. So those who refuse to acknowledge Krishna as the supreme controller, and those conditioned souls who themselves want to become enjoyers and controllers, they still have to come under the influence of the material nature, and still indirectly they are still being dominated by Krishna, because even the material nature is under Krishna's domination. So there is no way to escape from being dominated by Krishna, whether directly or indirectly. Those liberated souls who have actually been enlightened about the futility of this, of pursuing these material desires, they understood that it is extremely foolish to nurture the material desires, which only result in us becoming deluded by the influence of the material energy, to the point where we don't even realize that we are suffering in this dukkhalayam due to the delusion by material energy. We are thinking that we are enjoying and we are being controllers. However, we are actually deluded to the extent where we don't realize that we are actually being controlled and exploited by material nature. And that's why we are actually being forced to go through the incessant cycles of Janma Mrityu Jara Vyadhi in so many different types of material bodies. So from our original superior condition of being part and parcel of Krishna's superior energy, the divine energy, we have now become degraded to this position due to our material contamination. We thought that we could become independent from Krishna and we could become enjoyers and controllers just like him, but we have actually degraded ourselves to this position, and still we are still under his control through the material nature. So in both cases, we can never be independent from Krishna. Another meaning of guna is rope. It is to be understood that the conditioned soul is tightly tied by the ropes of illusion. A man bound by the hands and feet cannot free himself. He must be helped by a person who is unbound. Because the bound cannot help the bound, the rescuer must be liberated. Therefore, only Lord Krishna or his bona fide representative, the spiritual master, can release the conditioned soul. We can see that in many other schools of thought, there's always this debate going on, whether people tend to ask this question, whether do you really need a spiritual master to be enlightened about the transcendental topics. So a lot of people, they tend to even boast that they are all self-taught geniuses in these spiritual topics, but that is also another form of delusion, because even someone who is, as mentioned here, the bound cannot help the bound. So the spiritual master should really come from a bona fide parampara. And in some other schools of thought, they spread this false notion. They simply say that, no, you don't really need a spiritual master. Everything is within you. You can search for all the knowledge from within yourself. So that is that only shows their ignorance, also due to the delusion by Maya, because only if the spiritual master who belongs to a bona fide parampara, only he is truly enlightened, and only such people can deliver the conditioned souls. Otherwise, it always becomes the case of the blind leading the blind. So even these people who say that, no, you don't need a spiritual master, everything is within you, you can learn on your own. So if that is the case, why can't we simply learn everything on our own and get certified without even going to any academic institution? So even for the material type of knowledge, we still have to join the recognized institutions. We cannot simply go to some unrecognized university and expect to secure a job. So even for such inferior material type of education, we have to be extremely cautious about getting knowledge from the recognized sources. So this matters about spiritual science is even more important, because from the so-called universities and colleges, which are supposed to be so-called academic institutions, they only impart knowledge about how we can be better than animals in the business of eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. They don't address the real problems of life, about how we can liberate ourselves from the problems of Janma Mrityu Jara Vyadhi. So even in the recent case of this pandemic, we saw that there were many developing nations, they had their beautiful vision of Vision 2020 about how to become a developed nation. But at the dawn of 2020, all those nations, they we only saw the frustration which occurred, because we could clearly see that this so-called material development, it is never going to solve our problems, which is none other than Janma Mrityu Jara Vyadhi. We have been suffering perpetually due to these problems in those 84 lakh apartments. Even in this human form of life, despite the so-called technological advancement, we still have no answers about how to overcome these problems of Janma Mrityu Jara Vyadhi. Because even that problem of Vyadhi, that completely denied us that beautiful vision of becoming a so-called developed nation, because even those so-called developed nations, even they could not completely overcome that problem overnight. So that was actually a tight slap to all those who are completely ignorant and they think that material development is everything. We are spirit souls, and only spiritual science can solve all our problems. So if we think that material wealth can solve all our problems, then that is just the symptom of how acute is our material disease. Without such superior help, one cannot be freed from the bondage of material nature. So there's no question that we really need the spiritual master. And even in Gita 4.34, Krishna himself specifically mentions about the importance of a spiritual master. Devotional service of Krishna consciousness can help one gain such release. Krishna, being the Lord of the illusory energy, can under this insurmountable energy to release the conditioned soul. He orders this release out of his causeless mercy on the surrendered soul and out of his parental affection for the living entity, who is originally a beloved son of the Lord. Therefore, surrender unto the lotus feet of the Lord is the only means to get free from the clutches of the stringent material nature. So, those who, the conditioned souls who wanted to be independent from Krishna, they actually became dependent, or they came under the clutches of material nature. So, for those who have understood this, the futility of pursuing this material desire, the only way is to surrender to the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord, to be free, to become free from the clutches of material nature. Instead, we go back to our original position of being dependent completely on the Supreme Lord. The words Mam Eva are also significant. So this verse, in this verse, it is stated, Mam Eva Ye Prapajante. Mam means unto Krishna, Vishnu only, and not Brahma or Shiva, although Brahma and Shiva are greatly elevated and are almost on the level of Vishnu. It is not possible for such incarnations of Rajoguna and Tamoguna to release the conditioned soul from the clutches of Maya. In other words, both Brahma and Shiva are also under the influence of Maya. Only Vishnu is the master of Maya. Therefore, he alone can give release to the conditioned soul. The Vedas, Shvetastra Upanishad 3.8 confirm this in the phrase Tam Eva Viditva, or freedom is possible only by understanding Krishna. Even Lord Shiva affirms that liberation can be achieved only by the mercy of Vishnu. Lord Shiva says, Mukti Pradata Sarvesham Vishnu Eva Na Samshaya. There is no doubt that Vishnu is the deliverer of liberation for everyone. So from this verse in the Gita 7.14, we can clearly see that even the material energy is under the influence of Krishna. So merely by pursuing our material desires, we become more and more entangled under the clutches of the material energy, and still we are being kind of indirectly under the control of Krishna. So pursuing our material desires will only make us further entangled, and we can never be completely independent from Krishna. Those who refuse to be under the control of Krishna directly, so they, those conditioned souls are still forced to be under the control of Krishna through the material energy. But the transcendental souls, the liberated souls, they are under the control of Krishna's internal energy, and therefore that is liberation from the clutches of Maya, but still they become dependent on Krishna. So nothing can be independent from Krishna. Only he alone is independent. So in this verse from the Bhagavatam, even the transcendental wives of Lord Sri Krishna did not know completely the unfathomable glories of the Lord. This ignorance is not mundane because they have achieved the transcendental position. However, as Prabhu said previously, their ignorance is not mundane because Krishna himself is the one who makes them ignorant to let them enjoy the rasa or mellow, especially the conjugal, the mellow of conjugal love. Because there is some action on of the internal potency of the Lord in the exchange of feelings between him and his eternal associates. So not just in this case, but also in the case of the Gopas and Gopis in Vrindavana. In this verse, it specifically refers to the queens of Dwarka, but even in the case of Vrindavan, we could see that the residents of Vrindavan, they were all still ignorant of the reality of Krishna. They were ignorant of the original identity of Krishna, and that was due to the intervention of Krishna's Yogamaya, because he wanted them to enjoy according to the rasas. The Lord exchanges transcendental relations in 5 ways as proprietor, master, friend, son, and lover. So the 5 rasas are Santa, Dasya, Sakya, Vatsalya, Madhurya. In each of these pastimes, he plays fully by the potency of Yogamaya, the internal potency. He plays exactly like an equal friend with the cowherd boys, or even with friends like Arjuna. He plays exactly like a son in the presence of Yashoda Mata. He plays exactly like a lover in the presence of the cowherd damsels. And he plays exactly like a husband in the presence of the queens of Dwarka. So only when these liberated souls, they can enjoy the exchange of rasas, only as long as they are completely ignorant of the original identity of Krishna. Otherwise, we could completely see from chapter 11 of the Gita. In chapter 11, as we know, Krishna revealed his Vishwarupa Darshan to Arjuna because of Arjuna's request. So, after the middle portion of chapter 11 of the Gita, we could see that the mood of Arjuna changed. It even went to such an extent when Arjuna even started to apologize for joking about Krishna. So he was recalling all those times when he used to be treating Krishna like just an ordinary person. So Arjuna, who was treating Krishna as just his cousin or a friend, his mood changed to that of complete reverence towards Krishna after seeing the Vishwarupa Darshan. So that is why Krishna chooses to let his devotees to be in ignorance under the influence of Yogamaya, so that they can enjoy the rasa. Otherwise, their condition will be similar to that of Arjuna when he actually became his rasa of being a friend. It changed to more like kind of a very formal relationship. So this ignorance of the queens of Dwarka, it was due to the will of Krishna, because he is the one who controls both types of energy, the superior internal energy and also the inferior energy. So this ignorance of the queens is not mundane, because it is due to the influence of the Yogamaya. But compared to the ignorance of the atheists and also the ignorance of conditioned souls generally, that is due to the influence of Mahamaya. So that is considered the mundane type of ignorance. So the ignorance of the transcendental devotees, like the queens of Dwarka, that should not be equated to the ignorance of the atheists or the conditioned souls, which are due to the influence of Mahamaya, unlike the transcendental ignorance of the queens of Dwarka, which is due to the influence of Yogamaya, because Krishna himself, he wants them to enjoy the rasa. That is the relation between the Lord and his transcendental devotees who act as his associates in the spiritual sky, where there are innumerable Vaikuntha planets. When the Lord descends, he does so along with his entourage to display a complete picture of the transcendental world, where pure love and devotion for the Lord prevail without any mundane tinge of lording it over the creation of the Lord. So, pure love for the Lord has to be completely uncontaminated, without any desire of trying to become an enjoyer or controller. So if there is that tinge of material contamination, that is how the originally the original part and parcels of Krishna's superior energy, they become contaminated and they become subservient to the influence of material nature in this material world. So the material world is exactly a perverted reflection of the spiritual world. Still, the dharms are identical. The dharms in the material world are still identical to the spiritual world. So in the Goloka chart, we can clearly see that the topmost planet, Goloka Vrindavan, the Goloka part is like a region consisting of the three main dhams, Vrindavana, Mathura, and Dwarka, followed by the Vaikuntha region. Then this Devi Dham at the bottom. So the dhams, the top three dhams, are also here in this material world. And this is because Krishna wants to show how is it like in the spiritual world, so that the urge and the curiosity or the curiosity for devotees will be there, so that there will always be the urge to go back to the spiritual world. Such devotees of the Lord are all liberated souls, perfect representations of the marginal or internal potency in complete negation of the influence of the external potency. The wives of Lord Krishna were made to forget the immeasurable glories of the Lord by the internal potency, so that there might not be any flaw of exchange. So it was all due to the will of Krishna himself, because he wanted them to enjoy the rasa without any flaws. Otherwise, even they would become as scared as how Arjuna was in chapter 11 of the Gita. So they took it for granted that the Lord was a hand-packed husband, always following them in lonely places. So this was actually due to Krishna's will, because he wanted them to enjoy the rasa completely. In other words, even the personal associates of the Lord do not know him perfectly well. So what do the thesis writers or mental speculators know about the transcendental glories of the Lord? The mental speculators present different theses as to his becoming the cause of the creation, the ingredients of the creation, or the material and efficient causes of the creation, etc. But all this is but a partial knowledge about the Lord. So even if you look at the level of the material world in general, this entire material creation, which is 1/4 compared to the spiritual world, which is actually 3/4 of Krishna's entire energy. So this material creation is only 1/4 Ekapada Vibhuti, and this whole material creation is under the administration of Mahavishnu. So that is how Krishna remains completely free from the material affairs, because the first Purusha Avatara in the form of Mahavishnu, he is in charge of the entire material creation. But even within this material creation, there are innumerable universes. So the second Purushavatara starts in the form of Garbhodakashaya Vishnu. Then, in order to take care of the entire material creation, in order to accompany all the living entities, we have the third Purushavatara, which is that of Shirodakashaya Vishnu. So, even when you look at the first level of the Purushavatara, even Mahavishnu himself appears to be like independent from the material affairs, in the sense that the second and third Purushavasaras, they appear to be much closer to each of the material universes and the living entities. So Mahavishnu, as the first Purushavatara, he appears to be like the overall person who oversees the entire administration. But Mahavishnu himself is an expansion of Krishna. So Krishna always remains as Swayam Bhagavan in his Swayam Rupa in Goloka Vrindavana. So that is how he remains still independent of all the material affairs, though it is still happening due to his energy only. Since Mahavishnu is also an expansion of Krishna, so still everything is still under Krishna's control, though he is like he always remains under he remains covered by the Yogamaya. So even when he descends to the material world, he still remains covered by the Yogamaya. So these two coverings are always there. One for the conditioned souls who are completely deluded by the material by the material energy. They themselves being, for example, in the case of the living entities who are completely under the influence of the mode of ignorance, because as we know, there are three modes: goodness, passion, and ignorance. And it is stated in chapter 14 of the Gita that there's always competition between these three modes, because the three modes are like the puppeteers who always try to control the living entities, the conditioned souls. So there's always competition between the three modes. And in different types of living entities, there is one mode which becomes the predominant mode. So in the case of the extremely contaminated living entities who are completely in ignorance, so they are like fully covered by the influence of Mahamaya. So there is one covering of Mahamaya which completely surrounds them in ignorance. And even for those slightly enlightened conditioned souls, even for those who have managed to penetrate through this covering of Mahamaya, even they will find it difficult to understand Krishna fully, because even Krishna himself remains covered in his Yogamaya energy. So for the conditioned soul who is completely contaminated by the material contamination, he has to penetrate through these two coverings of Mahamaya and Yogamaya. So that is only possible with the mercy of Krishna. Even to eliminate our ignorance and to have God consciousness or Krishna consciousness, we still need the mercy of Krishna, who is present in our hearts as the super soul. Only the Chaitya Guru, who accompanies us 24/7 without being separated anytime, because the Chaitya Guru, who is the super soul, he accompanies us, us meaning the spirit soul, in all the different bodies, in all the 84 lakh different types of material bodies. He always accompanies all the conditioned souls. So he knows everything about us since time immemorial. He knows everything about our past, and therefore we get awarded with the different types of apartments. So now we have got this prestigious apartment, which is the human form of life. So this has become possible because our Chaitya Guru has been observing our activities, and he saw that we are qualified to be given this apartment based on our past activities. So whether we are going to prove it to him that we deserve our original transcendental body, or whether we are going to waste this precious opportunity, it all depends on our activities alone. So it is completely foolish to degrade ourselves from this position. It should be, we should always further intensify our devotional service so that we can regain our original position instead of being degraded to some other low-class apartments. So the Chaitya Guru, who always accompanies the different living entities means that those living entities or spirit souls in different bodies, Krishna does not see the living entities differently. He only sees us as the spirit souls. It's just that since every spirit soul is occupying a different type of apartment, only that material designation makes us to be different from each other. Otherwise, Krishna only sees us as his parts and parcels. So this entire material creation is under Mahavishnu, and Krishna always remains covered by his Yogamaya, even when he descends to this material world. So the conditioned souls must attain the mercy of Krishna first, even to penetrate through the Mahamaya covering, which is covering us. Even after penetrating through the covering of Mahamaya, we still need the mercy of Krishna to see his original identity, so that he would reveal his original identity, which is being covered by the Yogamaya potency. So that's why even in Ishopanishad, we saw the prayer in mantra number 15, which is the prayer appealing to Krishna to reveal his face, which is covered by the dazzling Brahmajyoti effulgence. So that simply means that even for the enlightened devotees, even in the case of impersonalists, even the impersonalists, they are struggling to know the original identity of Krishna, because they have actually managed to penetrate through the Mahamaya covering, and that's why they became enlightened in the spiritual topics. At least they became enlightened enough to accept the existence of God. Otherwise, the completely ignorant atheists, they are fully covered by Mahamaya. But at least the theistic people, even the impersonalists, at least they have managed to penetrate through the Mahamaya covering around them. But still their understanding is limited, because Krishna is covering himself through the Yogamaya covering. And in order for the impersonalists to completely graduate to the highest level of realizing the absolute truth, that is the realization of Bhagavan, the Bhagavan realization. So even for that, they need Krishna's mercy. So that is what we saw from Ishopanishad mantra 15 and also mantra 16. Even the Brahmana community, which is assigned with the task of learning and also conveying knowledge about the Param Brahma, the Supreme Brahman. So that's why the Brahmanas are known as Brahma Jana iti Brahmana. So the ones who are experts in the knowledge of Brahman or Supreme Brahman. So even they also have to endeavor more intensely to actually attain the mercy of Krishna, so that he would reveal himself to them. So the impersonalists who have managed to penetrate through the Mahamaya covering, they still need the mercy of Krishna if they want to see Krishna's original identity as Bhagavan. That would be the highest level of realization. So after attaining the level of the liberated souls, even in the spiritual world, these liberated souls continue to be under the domination of Krishna, in the sense that they are still given the opportunity to interact with Krishna according to the rasas, and they are still under the control of Krishna's Yogamaya potency, in such a way that they all can participate in the interaction with Krishna according to their preferred rasa. So there can be no complete liberation or independence for any living entity, because the entire creation is under Krishna's control, whether it is the material or spiritual world. So even the liberated souls, they continue to be under Krishna's loving control. It is just that Krishna himself says that this material world is Dukalayam, and therefore he wants us to be directly under his control, under his Yogamaya potency, so that we can still enjoy according to our loving rasa with him, compared to pursuing the material desires and suffering in all the different 84 lakh apartments. So even after being liberated from the clutches of Maya, we willingly accept the domination of Krishna, because that is the only thing that would be good for us. Nothing else could solve our material disease. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the first canto, 11th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Lord Krishna's Entrance into Dwarka. So we have completed chapter 11. Next week will be chapter 12. That's all for today. Any questions or comments? Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Okay. So we'll meet again next week. Hare Krishna.